All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. What if I told you that the solutions to some of our biggest, most complex modern crises, things like systemic poverty, runaway inequality, and even our modern epidemic of mental distress, might actually be completely mapped out in a supposedly dusty, untouchable religious text from over 2 millennia ago? Well, today we're unpacking a truly fascinating piece of literature, the Dīgha Nikāya Sīlakkhandha Vagga.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the ancient world-changing text itself, then move into dismantling the caste system, the welfare state model, decoding psychology and perception, the miracle of teaching, and finally wrap up with its Dhamma legacy for today. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Ancient world-changing text. A literal world-changing blueprint. To really wrap our heads around this paradigm shift, we've got to look at how this knowledge was actually preserved historically. It's a cornerstone of Theravada Buddhism, containing 13 distinct discourses or suttas. And just look at this journey, moving from the incredible, literally legendary memory of Venerable Ananda way back in the 5th century BCE to being painstakingly inscribed on palm leaves in Sri Lanka, right through to incredibly rigorous council revisions by royal scholars in Thailand. It turns out, this isn't just folklore, you guys. It is a meticulously protected intellectual heritage.
Now here is what's absolutely fascinating. These 13 suttas, they aren't just a bunch of random, disconnected moral stories. When modern researchers analyze them, they form this deliberate architecture of wisdom that maps surprisingly perfectly onto our modern societal sciences. I mean, you have the Ambatha and Sonadanda suttas dealing heavily with sociology, the Kuddadanta exploring complex economics, and the Potthapada diving straight into deep psychology.
And none of this architecture is by accident. You can see it clearly in foundational chapters like the Brahmajala and Samanaphala suttas. The entire structure systematically guides the reader entirely away from 62 wrong views and blind faith, moving them step by step through a threefold training. It starts grounding you with basic morality, or sīla, then moves into intense mental concentration, or samadhi, and finally culminates in ultimate wisdom, or panna. It's literally an engineered pathway out of ignorance.
Moving on to Section 2, Dismantling the Caste System. A massive sociological shift. So, through the Ambatha and Sonadanda suttas, this text takes a sledgehammer to the deeply entrenched inequalities of ancient India. The Buddha radically dismantled the rigid caste system by directly, and I mean directly, contrasting the old world's obsession with birthright against a totally new paradigm. He argued that your worth as a human being is absolutely not granted by the family you happen to be born into. Actually, scratch that. It's determined entirely by your personal morality and your wisdom.
It really all boils down to this one incredible idea. Excellence depends not on birth, but on morality and wisdom. It completely stripped away all those superficial social divisions to focus entirely on human character. And you have to remember, saying this out loud in a society strictly stratified by supposed divine birthrights, that was incredibly dangerous, but it laid an early, absolutely crucial foundation for human equality.
Section 3. The Welfare State Model. Let's talk ancient economics.
Okay, this is the part that literally blew my mind. The Kuddadanta Sutta actually maps out a comprehensive model for a welfare state, and we're talking thousands of years before the modern political term was even invented. It argues that violence and theft can't simply be punished away. Why? Because they are systemic problems rooted deeply in poverty.
This juxtaposition is just brilliant. It shows a political economy that is way ahead of its time. Instead of just relying on the sword, harsh punishments and executions to supposedly maintain order, the text demands that the state actually invest in its people. By supporting agriculture with seed, providing capital for trade, and ensuring fair wages for officials, the state proactively removes the desperation that breeds crime in the first place. A real game changer.
And building right on top of that economic shift, the Buddha completely flipped the script on religious economics too. He completely redefined the concept of sacrifice. Now, back in those days, sacrifice meant massive, wildly expensive, and bloody animal slaughter. But he shifted it into a practice of social and internal development. True sacrifice, the text argues, is performing good deeds, maintaining moral precepts, and developing your own mind. It completely moved the investment from appeasing unseen gods to actually improving tangible human society.
All right, Section 4, Decoding Psychology and Perception. Time to look inward.
Way before we even had words like cognitive science or modern psychology, the Potthapada Sutta was already meticulously mapping out exactly how human perception works. It systematically explores the arising and passing away of sanya, or perception, through various stages of concentration and meditative absorption. It even dives headfirst into the complex relationship between consciousness and physical form, perfectly mirroring what modern philosophers still debate today as the mind-body problem.
You know, the sheer pragmatism here is striking. The text outright rejects all those speculative, empty metaphysical debates. People back then absolutely loved arguing about whether the self was infinite or finite. But the text basically points out, hey, these debates lead absolutely nowhere and do zero to actually alleviate human suffering. Instead, it focuses 100% on practical psychological liberation. It's about understanding your cognitive processes so you can actually end mental distress.
Which brings us to Section 5, the miracle of teaching, education, and leadership.
In the Kavada and Lohika Suttas, we get a total rethink of how you actually influence people. The Buddha explicitly forbade his followers from using supernatural tricks or mystical powers just to gain converts or demand blind faith. Instead, he elevated what he called the miracle of teaching as the absolute highest possible power. And what does that mean? It means changing human behavior through reason, critical thinking, and the genuine, observable ethical standard of the teacher themselves.
Plus, in the Avijjā Sutta, he absolutely roasted the whole tradition of the blind leading the blind. You know, teachers demanding strict adherence to rituals that they themselves didn't even fully understand. So, in place of empty ritual, he offered the 4 Brahma-viharas: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These weren't just nice ideas, they were presented as the actionable, logical path to effective, real-world leadership.
And finally, Section 6, Dhamma Legacy for Today. What this means for our world right now.
We finally hit the culmination of this whole architecture in the Subha Sutta, which actually takes place just after the Buddha passed away. Venerable Ananda beautifully summarizes the text's core structure, again, morality, concentration, and wisdom. And he argues that the system itself, the Dhamma and Vinaya, or doctrine and discipline, was perfectly designed to serve as the eternal teacher. It entirely replaced the need for a human leader, creating a completely self-sustaining architecture to guide humanity forward. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one thought. We've seen today that this isn't just some dusty, ancient religious artifact, it is a remarkably modern blueprint. If a 2,000-year-old text already nailed poverty as the root of crime and ethics as the true foundation of human equality, why is our modern world still struggling so hard to catch up? Perhaps the answers to tomorrow's biggest problems have been waiting for us in the past all along. Keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.